Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again. Tomorrow it's Friday, Parashat Pinchas. This week was a difficult week when we remembered the terrible Shabo massacre, where the Shabo family lost a mother and 3 of her children were murdered inside a home here in Itamar, going back in 2002, and also the head of the response team, Yosef Twitos. Every year, this is a time of year we recall, we have the memorial service. And this week's portion I would like to do in their memory of this very, very tragic terror attack. And I want these precious souls, let them be remembered for their living here in Itamar and for their love of building the land. And we have to, of course, connect this concept, all those who have given their lives for the sake of Israel. These lives are lives, not individual lives, not prati lives, as we say in Hebrew, concerned about their personal lives, but they become totally connected in the entire nation of Israel, fighting for the land. And again, this week's portion, I'd like to connect to this through the beautiful words of Nachmanides. And he asks a very important question. If we open up, we see that, of course, the portion opens up, and we're going to get back to that concept of Pinchas, Phineas, receiving the blessing of the covenant of Hashem, of Briti Shalom, the covenant of peace. What is this peace covenant all about? We have to get back to understand that. And by the way, it's very important to remember that Pinchas is buried right here below Itamar, in the cave in the ancient Itamar below us, in the present day village of Awarta. But that's really the ancient Itamar. So Pinchas is buried there. Elazar, the Itamar Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, are buried here. So obviously there's a very, very special area, Itamar being so connected to these Kohanim, these priests. And I'd like to also connect that to what we're talking about. But first I want to open up with the beautiful words of the Ramban. He has a great question. The Ramban asks why, if we see, of course, the counting, this week's portion, there is another, the book of Numbers has a reason why it's called Numbers, right? Because there are, the beginning of the book opens up with a census taken counting Israel. Here again, in this week's portion, there is another census taken. And here, the answer given why the census is taken in this week's portion, basically is because Israel is about to enter the land of Israel. And as we read at the end, the entire generation of the desert has passed away, with the exception of those we'll mention in a moment. And therefore, right now, there's a census being taken in order to be able to prepare to inherit the land of Israel, to divide the land to the tribes. So we have to know, again, how to divide up the different portions, the geographical portions of the land of Israel, according to the different tribes. So therefore, it's very important to know the number of each tribe, how much they numbered, and therefore how to divide up the land of Israel. So that was the reason for the census in this week's portion. We feel the atmosphere getting ready to enter the land. Now, the Nachmanides, the Ramban, he answered the question. He says, something doesn't make sense. Amongst all this numbering of the tribes, we see the numbering of the tribe of the Levites. And here, it doesn't make sense. What was the reason? The Levites, we know, didn't receive a portion of the land of Israel. So why are they numbering the Levites? And the Rambam gives them explanations. We know they didn't receive a portion, but maybe for those that are alive now will receive the cities that were mentioned later on. So that could be a reason. But he gives a reason, which a stronger reason, and he says it's really for the honor of the Levites. Why for the honor of the Levites? Because he describes it as a legion shel melech, a legion of the king. This special group of the Levites, which were 2 important families, of course, came out of them. The Levites, right, as we know, are divided into Kohanim and the Leviim, right? The priests and the Levites itself as another subgroup, that they were both working in the temple for the different functions each one had. And this very special group, how could it be that they're going to be numbering Israel, not mentioning the Levites? It's impossible not to mention them. Of course they have to be mentioned here. And so the Rambam said it's for their honor. The Rambam proves it in a few different ways. Number one, we see women being mentioned. So if it was only for the division of the land, we know it goes by the men's side. So there'll be no reason to mention the women, but we see in the Levites, women are mentioned, right? Yocheved, Miriam, they're mentioned here. He also mentions that we see that in the other countings of the other tribes, they don't go further than generations. They just go for 2 generations down. They mention, but here they go further down the line to the great grandchildren in the Levites in their accounting. So we see a few reasons why, for sure, it's not here for reasons of dividing the land, but it's here to honor the Levites. He also mentions a very beautiful point that it doesn't mention, when it talks about Aaron, it doesn't mention the priesthood regarding Aaron for the honor of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's all about honor here. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't a priest, right? So to honor him, it didn't mention that priesthood. That's a great lesson in itself, to learn to be very sensitive and respectful when you're talking about other people who's around you, and not to hurt someone's feelings. Although we know Moshe Rabbeinu was the most modest of all, would never be hurt anyway, but just to teach us that lesson of sensitivity, don't mention the honor of others in front of Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of Israel. So that's another side issue itself. So to summarize, we see here the Ramban in his beautiful words describes honor. The whole concept of numbering the Levites is all about honoring this special tribe. And the special, again, the tribe of the Levites. And the Rambam adds something which just adds a lot more flavor to this whole concept, is that we see that at the end, after the counting, it just mentioned 2 survivors, Kalev and Joshua. They were the only 2 that didn't perish in the desert, because they did not sin with the sin of the spies. And they were Kalev and Joshua. But we know that there were other people that were over 60 years old. They were over 60, right? They were the only 2 over 60 at that time. But in reality, there were others. And that was Elazar and Pinchas, Pinchas. We see them around also. So in reality, the Ramban, in his beautiful words, says that the entire tribe of the Levite tribe, that entire tribe did not sin with the sin of their spies. And therefore, they were alive and they didn't perish in the desert. So we see that beautiful, special tribe of the Levites were singled out in their honor as this legion of the king's legion, special forces of the king. And because of their great devotion to Hashem the entire way, and that whole entire tribe did not sin. We know there were no Levite were sent to spy the land, and they did not sin at all. So that's a beautiful remark of the Ramban. And if we take that concept and we connect it to Phineas in the opening of the portion, Phineas represents that covenant of peace. And he, of course, as a member of that legion, that special forces of the tribe of the Levites, he's the one who stands up to enrage in that terrible feeling of zealousy when such atrocities are being committed in the land, in the camp. They weren't in the land of Israel yet, but they were committed in the camp of Israel, as we learned about in last week's portion of Shimon, right? Simon, Shimon, the head of the tribe, sinning with Kozbi Batsu. So that atrocity, he wasn't able to stand by to see the profaning of Hashem's name. Of course, we all see that was centered around idol worship and everything like that. He stood up as trying to stand up for the beauty of what is represented through Torah and through a world, a life of living in proper, living with proper peace and harmony with ourselves, connected to the one creator of the universe, and not, God forbid, sinning with terrible sexual crimes and idol worship. So it was Pinchas that could not bear to allow this terrible tragedy to take place, and he went ahead and he stood up for Hashem, fighting God's battles, you could say. But that was something that comes out as a representative, again, of the Levites. He was given the Levite badge at that moment when he stood up for the honor of Hashem, for the zealousy of God. That concept of peace, we see something very beautiful. We see, and this I heard it from Rav Castiel, he mentioned something very interesting. He said that we look at the korbanot, the sacrifices that are brought at the end of this week's portion, and there's a list of all the holidays, starting with Shabbat, going down to Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, and going through Passover, the New Year, Passover, all the holidays basically, Sukkot, all the Shavuot, all the holidays, talking about the musafim. Musafim are additional sacrifices which are brought on these holidays. We call them the musafim, the additional, besides the tmidim, the everyday sacrifices brought every day. Additional sacrifices are brought on these holidays. And we see something very interesting, that on every holiday, besides bringing the korbanot, we call them olah, they're burnt offerings, they're all burnt offerings that are added. In addition, it's mentioned that they brought a seir, izim, which is a goat, which was brought for a sin offering. Every one of those is an additional to the musafim of all the holidays. Besides the burnt offerings, an additional sacrifice was brought, which was a goat offering, which was a sin offering. And the question is, what kind of sin are we talking about? We know usually when a person sins on a personal level, there is a sin offering, right? He did it by shogeg, accidentally. He has to bring a sacrifice. Accidentally means he forgot that this was wrong. I'm not going to go into the details of when a person is obligated to bring a sin offering. But in generally, it's when a person sins, specific sin he did with, he forgot that it was wrong to do this, so he didn't know details about that sin. So he has to bring a sin offering. And here, what's going on? It's a holiday, and they're bringing, again, the tmidim, and they're bringing the musaf, the burnt offerings, and all of a sudden they have to add a sin offering. For what purpose? And the answer is that the sin offering is brought because of the fact that when you are doing so many things, and you're in the temple, and you're working, and you're doing so, sometimes you're not aware of a possible mistake that could have taken place. And you want to cover yourself. You want to cover yourself for God forbid if a mistake was made or something wasn't done without knowledge on the holiday. You want to also be covered. It's like sort of cover my back. So they brought that extra sin offering. But what's so interesting is that on the Sabbath, if we read about the sacrifice on the Sabbath there, of course, you bring the tzmidim, the two regular everyday offerings, right? The burnt offerings, and you add two more offerings for the musaf, for additional. But on the Sabbath, on Shabbat, we do not bring a sin offering. And so it's the only exception to all the other. If you look at all the verses and the holidays, pay attention to it. On Shabbat is the only exception. We don't bring the sin offering on Shabbat. And the question is, why on Shabbat is there no sin offering? And the answer is that Shabbat represents shalom, peace. We say Shabbat shalom. When you come in Israel, at least we say it in Israel here, because in Israel you have that perfect quality of tranquility and feeling that peace on Shabbat more than anything. Outside of Israel, we say, my wife asked me, why does everyone say, and when you're outside of Israel, good Shabbos, like it's saying it should be a good Shabbat. And she was so upset. I said, no, don't be upset. You're outside of Israel now. Rav Kook once said, outside of Israel, it's only good on Shabbat. But in Israel, it's shalom, it's total peace, total tranquility. So we say Shabbat shalom in the land of Israel. That's why that expression is so powerful. And that comes from the fact, this answers the question, why on Shabbat we don't bring a burnt offering? Sin offering. On Shabbat, there's total tranquility between Hashem, the creator of the universe, and the people of Israel, who Hashem gave us that beautiful gift of Shabbat. That tranquility, that beautiful achdut, that total unison of Israel with Hashem on Shabbat, leaves no room for mistakes. It's a very special connection. It's not like how it's different than the holiday. Shabbat is a very special level. We do nothing. We just sit here and receive the beautiful blessing of Shabbat. Unlike the holidays where we have to sanctify Mikadesh Yisrael Vazmanim, we have to sanctify Israel in the holidays. On Shabbat we totally receive that blessing without having to add something special on our part, just to rest and to receive that blessing. So Shabbat is the perfect unison, the perfect shalom with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with Hashem. Taking this concept back to the beginning of the portion of Pinchas, Pinchas was given the covenant of peace. That connects to the Shabbat. We see that special connection, that sacrifice of Shabbat with Pinchas. Shabbat, that representing that wholeness, that perfect unison. And that is why the tribe of the Levites were singled out. That they have that special aspect, that special, unique aspect of where Aaron HaKohen, Aaron the priest, is saying, Ohev Shalom, loves peace, V'rodev Shalom. Be like the students of Aaron who love peace and run and pursue peace. So peace, that wholeness is very, very special quality, was manifested by the tribe of the Levites, that they never sinned in the sin of despise. Connecting all this together, and we see how the land of Israel, acquiring the land of Israel, not God talking bad about the land of Israel, is all connected to that peace. It says regarding Jacob, Vayavo Yaakov Shalem Yeshem. Jacob came when he came back to the land of Israel after being in Mesopotamia for 20 years or so. He comes back, and it says Vayavo Yaakov Shalem. Jacob came to a place called Shalem, or he came as a whole. Now he was Shalem. Now he was at perfect peace because he's with the land. So we see how the land of Israel, together with the Kohanim, the priest, that special function of the priest, together with Shabbat, all those things are combining with that concept of Shalem, that wholeness, that oneness, that completeness is all connected to one another. Being in the land, of course, the sacrifice on Shabbat, which is the highest of high, and as we mentioned, the amazing tribe of the Levites that didn't sin in the sin of the spies. So it goes together. Loving the land of Israel, not talking bad about the land, will connect you and bring you back to the land. The land will be acquired through that peace covenant. If you are at peace with Hashem, and there's no room for others, there's no room for, God forbid, idol worship, there's no room, God forbid, for terrible sexual crimes. There's only room for Hashem in this world to behave the way we should be, in perfect harmony with ourselves. That will bring us to the acquisition to be able to divide the land of Israel properly. And therefore, how could we not mention the Levites when making the accounting? How can the Torah cannot mention that? Because they were literally, representing that peace in the land. And to connect this, what I opened up with, the terrible tragedy of the Shabbos massacre. Here on Itamar, the ancient Itamar is named after Itamar and Elazar and Phineas. They're buried right below here in the village. They're right here, when I look at them, they're the gravesite of our holy forefathers, buried right here in the ancient Itamar. And I look at the gravesite of the Shabbos massacre, and the family, and Yosef Twito, those who were murdered here for the land, for that love of the land, for that zealousy of just being here and fulfilling the commandment of just connecting to the land of Israel, and for the sake of Hashem. It's so perfect that this area of Itamar is so singled out for that connection of the oneness of Hashem, that peace with Hashem, and let them rest in peace. And in their memory, we'll continue to build our community and grow every day stronger and stronger. Shabbat Shalom, B'sorot Tovot, Yeshuot V'Nechama.